love this laptop right here. More accurately, we love the idea of this laptop. But why? It's small and it's packing some powerful hardware, but at $3,600, this price point puts it into competition with several incredible alternatives. So what was it about the 2026 ASUS ROG Zephyrus G14 that had my whole team fighting for FaceTime with it? Was it that good, or were we just wearing ROG tinted glasses? Well, we're gonna find out all about that right here, right now on Robeytech. Right up front, the ASUS ROG Zephyrus laptops have historically been some of our favorite for the past few generations. And there's a good reason why. Actually, there are several. They're thin, they're light, the speakers are cinematic, the display's crazy good, and the battery life has saved our bacon on a few occasions. But this version right here is not the same as all the ones we've used before. Our experiences have been with the Zephyrus G16, not the G14. So as we prepared for this review, we had to take a step back and ask an important question. Where prices stand and technology stand today, are there other laptops that outshine the Zephyrus G14, or are we correct in loving this thing the way that we do? Obviously, your mileage may vary, but we're gonna share some insights, some data, and our experiences to help you decide for yourself. Since this is not the first laptop of this name, let's talk about what we're actually looking at. The 2026 ASUS ROG Zephyrus G14 we have in front of us is equipped with the Intel Core Ultra 9 386H. This is Intel's third generation Core Ultra processor, codenamed Panther Lake. But unlike the Core Ultra X9, the Core Ultra 9 in this laptop has a few Xe GPU cores than its X variant because it's designed to work with a discrete GPU. And for that, we have the NVIDIA RTX 5070 Ti Mobile. But if you were hoping for an RTX 5080, ASUS does have Zephyrus laptops with one of those, but it'll add an additional $1,200 on top of that $3,600 price tag. It'll bump the RAM up to 64 gigabytes, and that makes that 14-inch screen a 16-inch screen. So it wouldn't be a Zephyrus G14 anymore, and that's up to you if you like or not. So there isn't a whole lot you can change on the spec without bumping up to a G16, but it is worth noting that ASUS lists a 16 gigabyte version as well. Since there is no expansion available for memory, we would recommend sticking with the 32 gig version that we have right here. But backing up to something you won't want to avoid, let's talk about the screen. ASUS calls this their OLED ROG Nebula Display HDR. I know that modern names read like something rolled a gerbil across a keyboard, and this one is no different. I'll share my thoughts on it in just a minute, but let me just say, dang, it's pretty. This 14-inch OLED has what ASUS is calling a 3K display, so it's not quite 4K, but it's also a higher resolution than the QHD Plus panel on the Zephyrus G16. As for storage, the G14 ships with a 1TB Gen 4 NVMe drive. Unfortunately, there is not an option to add another NVMe drive like you can do with the G16, so if you want to be a baller with a 2TB SSD or bigger, you're going to need to replace the actual existing drive. All that gives you an idea of what's inside here and what you get for $3,600. And now that we know a bit more about what we're looking at, let's walk through the user experience. Really what we're gonna do is we're gonna mess with build quality, go over just the ports and stuff like that, and really just kind of show you the different experience levels that we'll get through. So let's talk about ports real quick. So we do have Thunderbolt 4, so we have both PD, DP support plus data speeds up to 40 gigabit per second. So we have one of those. We have USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type-C. Again, you've got PD, you got DisplayPort, G-Sync support, data speeds up to 10 gigabits per second. You have two USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type-A data ports. You have one SD card reader, which is UHS 2, which is 312 megabits per second. You have a 3.5 combo audio jack. You have HDMI 2.1. You have Wi-Fi triple band, Wi-Fi 7, plus Bluetooth 6. The other thing too is that the power cable for this is proprietary. It does charge on USB if you want to, but really honestly, to get the maximum amount of power and run it at performance, you do need to actually have it plugged in, which is just something to be aware of. In terms of heft, like the thing about this laptop is it actually is really easy to carry. It's pretty hefty. I mean, don't get me wrong, like it is a hefty laptop. It feels very MacBookish in terms of the finish and stuff, but I mean, you also are seeing here, it does have quite a bit of some fingerprints and stuff like that. But what I've done, and as somebody who's used a Zephyrus G16 for literally 2 years, just a little bit of spray and a microfiber cloth, and you can keep this pretty clean. In terms of like thickness, in terms of putting it in a bag and stuff like that, most laptop bags will fit this no problem. This does fit in both of the LTT bags. Not that everybody cares about that, but because it's something that I use, it's just something to be aware of. Overall build quality and finish, it is a very premium feeling laptop. And you can see it doesn't actually have a lot of give or anything like that, which is actually really, really nice. Opening it up on the inside, You can see it's very MacBookish in the fact that like when you press, there's not a lot of give there, which is fine. The trackpad feels really, really smooth, which just something to be aware of. And the other thing too is that the keyboard, you will have to take some time to get used to it because again, the keys feel just a little bit more smushed when we compare this to like something like a standard keyboard, which I happen to have here, which is very dirty. Like, you know what I mean? Like you are seeing like keys themselves, like they're just a, you know, even on just a standard one, you're seeing that there's about, I don't know, maybe a good half a centimeter that's kind of squished in, which means as you kind of get used to the keyboard, you're gonna have to, that muscle memory is gonna have to kind of adjust. So you might see yourself pressing the enter, the caps lock, the shift just a little bit more frequently than you normally do. But all in all, like the typing experience and all that sort of stuff, you don't get a lot of heat on the outside, so being able to just kind of use it is pretty straightforward. Where this thing excels, sound quality of the Zephyrus is the best I have heard from any laptop, hands down. Now, when it comes to audio editing versus the MacBook Pro, which is honestly Brian's favorite, the soundscape of it is a lot more flat on the MacBook, which makes it better for basically balancing sound. This actually has a much more cinematic appeal. So when you're watching your Top Gun Mavericks, all those other things, there is no equal in terms of media consumption than this particular laptop. Consuming media on this, like you watching a movie, it's bar none. You Netflix, your Bridgertons, your Top Guns, anything that's gonna be like that, and even your games are going to be absolutely amazing. And again, doing movies and stuff like that, not a big deal in terms of overall fan noise. What I'm doing right now is when I have it plugged in here, it actually is on performance. And as you can see, as long as you're using the OS and all that sort of stuff, you're getting no fan noise. Like you're hearing nothing. Brian, you agree? No, nothing. Agreed. Yep, he's also agreeing. Brick size, it's pretty standard, right? It is bigger than a MacBook Pro, for sure. In terms of overall brick size, it's pretty average. It is annoying in terms of carrying around and stuff like that. Again, you can charge it with just USB-C if it has like the 100+ watt charging and all that sort of stuff. But again, it's gonna trickle charge in that way. Let's talk about gaming though. I do wanna make sure that you guys get an idea of what the fan noise is gonna be for gaming. The other thing too is I will say, and again, this also probably doesn't come through very well on a screen, is just how beautiful the OLED is. The OLED is very, very beautiful. In terms of, I have, and it was one of our older editors, he said it was harder to color correct on. So there was some settings he had to modify and adjust to balance the monitor. The monitor has a tendency to be a little bit more reddish. Which means that if you're going to do some content creation, you might have to do some monitor calibration. When we looked at this one in particular, it seemed about the same, but just something to be aware of. Now, I will say, and one thing I am going to show this just to give you an idea. When we go to speaker, Pacifica is still Pacifica. 50%. You think that drowns out the speaker? I'm asking no, not yet. A little bit higher. 70%, you can still hear it. Okay, so about 70%. You can still hear it, but I mean, if you're sitting in front of it, yeah, you can hear the fan noise. So you're like, more than likely, if you're gonna play a very big cinematic title, like your Cyberpunks, your Assassin's Creed Resynced or something like that, you're either going to have it fully cranked, and then I can't hear it, but then you have a lot of noise, or you're gonna have to use headphones. It's just the price you pay for performance. So I mean, all in all, like you can hear, the fans themselves are actually pretty loud. So just something to be aware of. And I don't feel like this is louder, or and I know we have a thermal section, we're gonna talk about this, but like from what I'm kind of used to, this is kind of on the same level as most other Windows-based laptops when it comes to gaming. But All in all, like outside of that from we should show this though. Let me show you this. Let's show you webcam. Okay, and so this is the sound quality of what it sounds like and all that sort of stuff. So in terms of what you're gonna hear from if you're using this for teleconferencing or anything, Zoom, all that stuff, honestly, you look pretty good. And the camera's in a good spot because I've actually got the laptop at a 90-degree angle, and you don't have to do anything like heavy adjustments. Like, it does a good job of keeping you framed, which is good. Anyway, guys, that's the camera. You've seen what it's like from a cinematic standpoint and under load experience. So if you were gonna do editing, all that stuff, you'd kind of know the noise profile for this as well. And then the other thing too is you also have all of the benefits that come with using Armoury Crate. So you have like EQ settings for speakers and all that stuff, and I'm not gonna cover into that as well. The only other thing I would say is just remember with this form factor, you only get a single NVMe. So if you do wanna upgrade or go to something larger, you're gonna have to clone the drive or do a clean reinstall if you're gonna do anything like that. But for the most part, it's just such a really nice, small, compact form factor that feels premium, it sounds premium, and it is a great overall experience. Is it worth the money? Well, let's keep going in the video and see and find out. Now that we've had some hands-on time with the G14, let's talk about performance. Since this is a gaming laptop, let's start there. In our charts, we're going to talk about performance with DLSS turned on, but we're also going to show those numbers alongside native performance without upscaling. For test presets, we're cranking up the visual settings except in Marvel Rivals, which will be turned to low to maximize frame rates for competitive performance. Now, as you look at these numbers, understand that there's always room for improvement with your own tweaking. Okay, starting with Assassin's Creed Shadows, the G14 averaged around 41 frames per second. In Black Myth Wukong, it took a little bit of a beating with an average of around 41 FPS. In Cyberpunk 2077, we saw averages just under 68 FPS. In Doom: The Dark Ages, we saw averages over 73 FPS. In Forza Horizon 5, we saw an average of 120 frames per second, and in Marvel Rivals, turning settings down to low for competitive gaming, we saw an average of 120 FPS. And finally, in World of Warcraft with basic presets on 10, our boat ride loop gave us an average of over 201 frames per second. As for creative workloads, we're going to show you our results on screen, but we're also going to pull in some data from Puget Systems' own tests for comparison. Starting with After Effects, the G14's Panther Lake CPU got an average score of 12,486. This places its performance ahead of the new desktop Core Ultra 7 270K+. Moving on to Lightroom Classic, the G14 looked a bit more modest with an average score of 11,296. If we're comparing it to CPUs in the Puget Systems testing, this would have put it in contention with AMD's Ryzen 7 9700X. Next up, in Premiere Pro, the G14 gave us an average score of 107,119, which puts it ahead of the Core Ultra 5 245K, but behind the Ryzen 9 9950X3D. And finally, in Photoshop, the G14's 386H gave us an average score of 10,164, which sandwiched it in between the 285K and the 265K respectively. As for Cinebench 2026 performance, the G14's Core Ultra 9 gave us an average of 509 in single-thread performance and 5,126 in multi-thread. Comparatively, performance was a bit more modest here, positioning it ahead of the 245K in single-thread operations and just ahead of the 9700X in multi-thread. Now, when we look at the cooling and thermals, the G14 is using a combination of fans, heat pipes, and a liquid metal thermal compound to keep heat managed. But how does it do with that? Well, under full CPU load, the G14 averaged around 89 degrees Celsius on the CPU, while the GPU hovered around 51 degrees. During our gaming benchmarks, we recorded the G14's temps at 76 degrees Celsius on the CPU and 69 on the GPU. Basically, the G14 didn't get warm enough to be in danger to itself, but you probably don't want to be using it directly on your lap for an extended period of time if you're doing something like gaming or compiling code. Now, this is a new bit we're trying out with laptop reviews since we know that some people, including ourselves, use their laptops with cooling pads. So we busted out the Razer laptop cooling pad to see what thermals would be like with one of those. And if you want to see a more in-depth look at the Razer laptop cooling pad, you can actually check out our full review right here. Now, under full CPU load, the G14 CPU and GPU both ran 3 degrees cooler at 86 degrees Celsius and 48 degrees Celsius, respectively. In gaming, we saw a much more significant drop in CPU temps from 76 degrees down to 69 degrees Celsius. And for GPU temps, those also lowered a fair bit from 69 degrees to 65 degrees Celsius. In other words, the Razer laptop cooling pad cooled the G14 like it was its job, which it is. But what about battery life? If a laptop has Sega Game Gear levels of battery performance, which just so you know sucked, While away from an outlet, that's going to impact what you can actually do with it. The good news is that the Zephyrus G14 and Intel's new Core Ultra CPU do some pretty amazing things together with the G14's 73 watt-hour battery. During our Procyon video playback battery life benchmark test, the G14 averaged 18 hours and 6 minutes of battery life. That's enough battery life to binge watch 2 full seasons of Bridgerton, which I'm going to be doing again on my next flight. So overall, the story of performance with the G14 is an interesting one. For gaming, the 2026 G14 is a decent performer, but it would have benefited from having a display with a slightly lower resolution. While the Mobile 5070 Ti is putting in some decent work driving a display that's not quite 4K, you start to see where it struggles with more cinematic titles at its native resolution. We've seen this in other laptops as well, and we say this every time we review a laptop. You need to look at the screen's resolution in context of the hardware that's driving it. Mismatched hardware and screens can make both look very bad, even if they're awesome in their own right. Unfortunately, we're seeing this play out on the G14. The screen is gorgeous and the 5070 Ti Mobile is great, but the combination is not ideal in some settings. Now, if cinematic gaming isn't your main use of the laptop, but you're looking for a machine to edit videos on the go, but you don't want to carry around a laptop that's as heavy as a toddler, the G14 offers a smaller, lighter alternative that won't break your back or spill Cheerios down your trousers. Now, there is a 4-figured elephant in the room that we need to talk about. And if you're looking at spending $3,600 on a laptop, is the Zephyrus G14 the right laptop for you? This is where things get interesting, because at the time of making this video, there weren't a lot of one-to-one spec competitors to the 14-inch form factor. That's not to say there weren't any alternatives, but we had to think creatively here when we're looking at options. If you aren't concerned about having the latest Intel CPU or its power efficiency, last year's Ryzen-equipped G14 has a similar spec. Same RTX 5070 Ti, same 32 gigs of RAM, same display, but a 2TB SSD and the price tag that's $900 lower. If size doesn't matter, but you wanted to keep the same spec and have the option to add storage, the Razer Blade 16 and the Zephyrus G16 are priced within a few $100s on either side of the G14. Both laptops have the advantage of an extra NVMe slot, and if you're gaming, a QHD+ OLED, which will help with the overall performance. Or there is this guy, the Acer Predator Helios Neo 16S AI. It may have last year's Core Ultra 9, but it also has last year's price tag at $1,900. Now, if you're unbothered by the price and the form factor is your priority, but your platform isn't as precious, you could pick up a 2026 MacBook Pro with 2TB of storage, 24 gigs of unified memory, and an M5 Pro chip for $3,350. And as someone who's been daily driving one for the past few months, it's an option worth considering. Again, this is the look of the landscape at the time of preparing this video, and we're putting this here to help you make the most informed decision you can with your money. That's a ton of information, so let's just distill it all down. Like I said in the intro, we love the ASUS ROG Zephyrus G16, and the G14 gave us just a smaller, lighter version of everything we love from the previous models we've tested. It looks great, the build quality is solid, its display is visually stunning, its speakers are wildly good, and the battery life is fantastic. But that said, the choice of screen resolution feels mismatched with the hardware inside. I know I've said this before, but I stand by it. I still think that QHD Plus is the sweet spot for gaming right now, and that goes doubly for a gaming on a laptop. Even if you were someone who was willing to spend top-tier prices for top-tier hardware, that kind of hardware doesn't exist in the Zephyrus G14 models right now. For that, you'll need to jump up to the Zephyrus Duo, and that would be around a $2,000 jump. So where does all of that leave us? Coming in at $3,600, the ASUS ROG Zephyrus G14 has some stiff competition, and one of those competitors may serve your needs better in the long term if you need high frame rates for gaming or you need expandable internal storage. But looking at it in isolation, the Zephyrus G14 is a great laptop, albeit an expensive one. It's powerful enough to work and game on the go. The screen, speaker, and user experience are just flat out incredible. It's light enough and durable enough to take anywhere, and it has enough battery life to keep you working or entertained on long flights. And with that, we're gonna wrap up our thoughts on the Core Ultra equipped 2026 ASUS ROG Zephyrus G14. But as always, we wanna know what you think. What do you think about the balance of components in this 14-inch laptop? And if you had this laptop or one like it, what were some of the things you wish you knew before buying it? And with a price tag of over $3,000, does one of the alternatives we recommended make more sense for you, or is the G14 still goated among its rivals? Let us know in the comments below. Now, while you're down there, if you like this video or you learned something from it, we'd love it if you'd hit those like, subscribe, and notification bell buttons. We have a lot more content like this coming here at Robeytech, Robeytech Live, and all of your other favorite social media platforms. And hey, if you have questions or want to talk about this video, hop onto our Discord server over at discord.gg/Robeytech. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video.